Yes, Spurs fans, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. We are giving you your Tuesday weekly panel show, joined by Sam and Billy here. Dave will be in here in just a moment. And of course, we're going to be dissecting what went wrong on Sunday night against Arsenal. It's just not what we expected, I think. I think we all were going into it with some sense of optimism, some sense of hopium, but it was absolutely crushed. It didn't even really feel like it was that different to when Thomas Frank would have been in charge, if I'm being perfectly honest. We're going to be discussing some referee controversies, just a controversy as well with the fact that Spurs did not make any attempt whatsoever to give us any hope that maybe we could end up surviving this relegation battle. So plenty of conversations around that. And if we do have time for it, there were some interesting articles that have come out specifically from The Guardian about how Spurs are going to be ripping up the wage structure if they do stay up this season. And is it almost a little too late at this point to even be doing something like that? So plenty to discuss, plenty to get into. Good to have you, Sam and Billy. Hopefully everything's good with you guys. Just going to take this early from Moondog, saying good evening, lads. Appreciate you, Moondog. Thanks for the support, as always, for the channel, my man, and anybody else that's coming in here. But let's get this out the way, guys. I mean, first thing we have to discuss is kind of the referee controversy that we saw, of course, in the North London derby. I'm going to go to you first on this one, Sam. Do you think if that goal was allowed, do you think Spurs would have mounted a comeback of some kind? Do you think we would have been able to stay in the game and be able to, let's say, muster out a draw? Or do you think kind of the result was sort of deserved?
Well, I don't know. I mean, probably on the balance of play, we probably deserved to lose. I don't think we did anything particularly well. You know, our goal came from overconfidence from Declan Rice trying to nutmeg our striker on the edge of his box. I mean, what kind of disrespect is that? But I don't think that we showed enough to win the game. However, the reason I was fairly confident of what I don't really know going into the game, but confident going into it nonetheless, was that I just felt if we could score, it would be like a real kick in the shins for this team that were hoping to obviously, you know, push on again with the title. And conceding not only to your biggest rivals, but also a team like us right now, who are like bottom of the form table, haven't won a game in this year. I felt like their mentality was going to start to crumble, and the way the game went on, you know, obviously we concede straight after halftime, typical Spurs, you know. I think that maybe the refereeing instruments played a part in that, because we had to wait around for another like 8 minutes or whatever before the game started. So unfortunately that didn't work in our benefit. Not to make excuses for the teams, because both teams had that, but they reacted, you know, with professionalism, and we unfortunately didn't. Got caught sleeping and they scored. But if that goal goes in, as I said about their mentality, like, people have been calling them out all week since they lost to Wolves. I mean, sorry, the draw to Wolves. Until that game, I didn't actually realize how bad their form was in terms of like, they hadn't won a game for 6 or whatever. Obviously, you know, I wish I could say that our form was bad when it was looking like 4 basically like 4 draws and a loss or something.
Yeah.
But I just felt like they had so much to prove, and the weight of expectation to go and win that game, having conceded twice with 2 kind of crap goals as well. Don't get me wrong, Colo did really well for both goals, but from their perspective, you know, bad playing out from the back and just poor defensive positioning from Gabriel. And again, not being strong enough, as I'm sure we'll talk about. But I just think that would have been way too much for them, and we'd have been able to hold out. I think they would have wanted the win too badly, and we'd have been able to just see out a 2-2 draw. I don't know if we had enough to push it, because, I mean, we basically created nothing. But look, I'm sure we'll go into it more, why we created nothing. But we did create nothing. And unfortunately, I don't think we just had it on the day to go and score again, other than that, especially once that goal ruled out, because the reverse was true for Spurs, in a sense that it just really took it out of us, and from that moment onwards, it kind of just felt like, well, it's over now.
Billy, do you believe in momentum changes if Spurs were allowed that equalizer? Do you think we would have been able to get a result, or do you think that result was sort of inevitable?
I mean, you never know, but I feel like the evidence was there to say that result was inevitable. I feel like from pretty much the kickoff, Arsenal were absolutely dominant. You know, we were very lucky at that time that the technology went down, because they had about 95% possession during that first 5 minutes, and it was just horrendous. And it looked like what it was, which is the team that are top of the league playing the team that are 16th, and it looked that kind of wide gap as well, to be honest with you. I'm not at this point judging Tudor or anything like that, because it's way too early into his tenure, and they are such a unfortunately a very competent team. But there was just I struggled to think of any impression that we made on the game, really, bar as Sam said, capitalizing on a mistake and then a decent disallowed goal, which should not have been disallowed. But other than that, it was just absolute dominance, I think, and the gap was really, really wide. I think it's a shame when you sort of look at what Wolves and Brentford did to them, and we didn't sort of put up that kind of fight. It's not to say that we didn't have any fight, because the first half we were trying to go with them, but I just kind of feel like they knew that they had to win that game to stay with a chance of the title, and it felt like that as well. It was like they almost played like a cup final when we were sort of hanging on for dear life, and I think the gap in quality was very, very stark there. I think between the two teams, very, very stark, and you didn't really get to see any tactical plan in that game, just because it was all Arsenal for like 90 minutes, essentially.
Yeah. There's a part of me that thinks that maybe there could have been some change in the momentum, and that Colomboani just single-handedly just getting us both equalizers, maybe that would have sparked something in the team. But I agree with you, Billy, and I think Sam was saying more or less the same, that pretty much from the moment of kickoff, they just were absolutely dominating us. So I think the result was more or less deserved. You just wonder if maybe we could have rattled that team by getting that equalizer. Maybe there would have been all of a sudden the wobble or the cracks that we've seen Arsenal show recently against Wolves and plenty of other teams. Yeah,
100%. I think one thing that is definitely true of this game, and it's been labelled a lot, is the crowd were really behind the team for the entire game. Even when it went down to 3-1, the atmosphere was incredible. And I think if it had gone 2-2, it would have gone up another level as well. So the atmosphere was insane already. And if it had gone 2-2, going down behind twice, that kind of surge in crowd noise might have led to something. So I think you're definitely right there. And but the crowd were really, really behind the team this time, even when it went to 3-1. And obviously, people were left by the time it eventually got to 4-1. But 3-1 down, there weren't groans and stuff like that have been all season. It was the crowd really, really played their part in this game. And obviously, we had the tifo as well.
Billy, you wonder if the crowd would have maybe made it more difficult for those Arsenal players to really blow us away. Sam, maybe we could have actually stayed in it for that reason, even though we were being absolutely outplayed. Who knows? Maybe that momentum change would have just somehow gotten us over the line with some type of point or something like that.
Yeah, obviously, Billy, you were at the game, right? So there was one moment in the first half that I noticed where we'd been under pressure for a good 10 minutes, and it had been loud, but it had started to sort of get quiet, and then it was like the crowd obviously saw. For me, I went a lot last season, and I don't really feel like I saw this really. And this is not necessarily a criticism on the fans, but an observation that when the team were really struggling, there wasn't that wall of noise behind them. Whereas yesterday, from like minute 10 onwards, it was like the crowd snapped back to that. What's the Gary Neville comment? Spurs brutalized Arsenal. Like that. Yeah. That's what I felt like, and we all the crowd all put in the required performance. Unfortunately, too many players on the day just didn't.
It was definitely the closest thing I've since that Conte game to that Conte game. I think the Bodo atmosphere, I would say, was probably slightly better at home, but I'd say this was as close to that kind of atmosphere that we had, particularly before the game and during the opening spell in the first half. The crowd were really, really good in this one.
Yeah, Dave, good to have you with us. We were just sort of discussing if in an alternate universe, if that goal was allowed, maybe we would have had some sort of momentum change. Even though we were being completely outplayed, who's to say that maybe Arsenal wouldn't start to wobble a little bit, and maybe their own momentum could have been taken away from them had that goal been allowed? If you had anything you wanted to add to that.
Well, I do think like refereeing decisions in general aren't helping us. Now, of course, it's not the only reason why we're not winning games, right? We're just not good enough on the football pitch. There's not enough dedication. There's not enough energy, not enough commitment from the players towards what we're doing. But refereeing decisions are altering some results this season, which is dragging us further down into relegation battle. You've seen the stat that we get a card every 4 tackles compared to, other teams that get a card maybe every second tackles. I think Romero was booked for remonstrating his frustration on the Ekitike goal that was given for Liverpool with the push on the back. Then ended up getting showing his frustration up the other end when he got tackled that went unpunished. On the opposition, he ends up getting booked, sent off. Doesn't help us in games like that. Then you're missing your captain for a few games. It also doesn't help. Then you get back into the North London derby with that second goal. You're thinking, okay, if that's allowed, maybe Arsenal become a little bit more nervous, a little bit more cautious. Their legs start going a little bit like jelly. Maybe we gain a bit of confidence and kick on. But it's disallowed. And it's sort of at some point then these players then not only are a lot of them frustrated with the ownership of the football club in terms of not showing enough ambition, not doing enough in the transfer market to help these players on the pitch. If you think Romero is on his own, I can guarantee you there's a lot of other players in the dressing room that feel sentiment towards his statement once the January transfer window closed. So you've got all them sort of problems, but then also if you're a player and you're getting decisions that are not going your way down one end and then you're getting goals disallowed for up the other end, you also become sort of beaten in that regard as well. Then it's like no matter what we do here, we are being fucking railroaded, bent over and absolutely ramrodded from all angles. It doesn't matter who. And at some point then as a player, that does affect you. That affects you on the football pitch. If it gets into your brain, it affects your mentality and stuff like that. And then you're almost going into games beaten. And that's where we're at right now. And I just don't think these refereeing decisions are really helping whatsoever.
Yeah. Just want to welcome some people into the house, and then we will be discussing briefly because we've had far too much referee controversies this season, but we do have to get a little bit stuck into that as to, again, how that's still happening. Stefan, good to see you in the house, saying we might not have gotten anything out of the game, but that disallowed goal was an absolute joke. King Hoddle kind of reflecting on what we were asking about the momentum, saying men against boys, they have a higher technical level and a greater physicality as well. Elements we are currently sorely missing in the likes of Kudus and others. Wayne Bonner, good to see you in the house as always. Please listen to Sam. Everybody do smash the like button. Do get into the comments below. We would really appreciate it. And subscribe if you haven't done already. Limpy Down Under saying, I think a huge bounce would have happened if we had signed a Redknapp or even a Hoddle for this game. But I will say I think Tudor is a good signing for at least the remainder of the season. But discipline is needed. And good to see you in the house, Shemtan as well. And anybody else that is joining us. Just on sort of the decisions this season, Billy, because we, of course, saw that very controversial call with Gabriel, the one that also wasn't called when it came to Hugo Ekitike on Christian Romero earlier this season. And even during the derby as well, we saw that the fourth official was apparently constantly telling Igor Tudor to stay inside his technical area. Well, we know that Mikel Arteta is an absolute serial man of doing the exact same thing, right? He's a repeat offender when it comes to coming outside his technical area. But apparently he wasn't reprimanded at all or even cautioned at all by the fourth official, yet Igor Tudor in his first game was. Do you feel like there has been a huge double standard this season when it comes to refereeing for Spurs? Is it maybe the worst season that maybe you've experienced for decisions against us?
It's definitely up there. And I think if you think back to like the Xavi red card and the Romero red cards, which are, I'm not saying they're not red cards, but if they're red cards, then what about all the other times that happens in the Premier League game and gets a yellow card? It's the consistency which is the problem. It's not the fact that, if that's a Kola Nwani foul, fine. You see them given all the time, but then why is the Ekitike one allowed then? It's just the consistency, which is the major problem, and we seem to always be on the other end of it. I think the possible reasons for that is the club don't seem to have a backbone about it. We've never kicked up a fuss with BGMOL. Arsenal's, I'm not crediting them for doing it, so I'm not in Forest, not crediting them for the way that they behave, but they constantly make it a conversation. Arteta does it in almost every interview after a game.
It's not always been the way in football though, because before that, Jose Mourinho used to do it. Ferguson used to put the referees on blast all the time. Klopp,
Guardiola does it. Like, it's just, you have to play the game, and Tottenham never play the game, that kind of game. I think Forest have written to PGM on about 4 times this season. Everton, Newcastle have all done the same. We're just like, it's almost like we just accept it. And I think I saw someone say on Twitter today, this kind of stems from the Diaz incident, which is now like 3 years ago or whatever. It's like, we don't seem to have a backbone with these kind of things. We don't seem to ever make it a conversation. We don't write to PGMOL. And you can say that, well, that might make a difference anyway, but it clearly does for Arsenal. Like, they constantly are on the receiving end of these kind of decisions. They constantly get away with their, the way that they rough players up. And we see it with Gabriel all the time. We see it in corners all the time. Because they stand up for their own club against referees, and Tottenham just let referees walk all over us, and we have done for a number of years. I think we need to have more backbone as a club. We should have already written to PGMOL several times this season. I remember being on this podcast talking about that Newcastle penalty that we gave away. Like, it was a horrendous decision. Again, the club don't come out about it. Romero is the only captain to be sent off for talking to a referee when he's captain. It's just, there's just so many this season. And I think the problem is we just sit there and take it all the time.
And the thing is, the benefits of doing what you're saying, Billy, coming out and putting pressure on these guys, whether it's the guys in the VAR room, the referee, the 4 officials, at the end of the day, they're all human. Forget about the technology. They're all human, and they can be manipulated. You can guarantee referees that are going in to referee Arsenal games know that already. If they have a bad game and don't give Arsenal get the big calls right or put them in Arsenal's favour, there's a letter going in about them. Their name is being put out on blast all week, and then all of a sudden, psychologically going into them games, then they already know, right, well, I've got to give decisions Arsenal's way so I can avoid that. And, the weaker clubs who don't do that, then often will be on the receiving end of it. And that's where we are right now.
Is this one of the worst seasons you can recall, Sam?
I was going to say that the problem is with what Dave's saying is, like, there's so many other issues that even though it's a massive issue, our people behind the scenes can't even fathom that as being a problem. Like, they've got so many other fires to put out of their own making, that there's no more brain capacity to think about that, and there's no one that seems competent enough to even do that sort of thing. Even though we've got the guy from Arsenal who's supposed to be, the messiah of turning our fortune around. Yeah. What was your question, Jack? Sorry that you asked.
No, I was just going to ask you if you can recall a season where there were more, controversial calls against Spurs. If there was a season you can recall where there was, again, this double standard that's happening, or is this maybe the worst one that you can remember?
I mean, there's probably a bit of recency bias, but I can't really remember specific seasons where I've really felt like, obviously, I know there's seasons where we haven't got penalties and stuff, like, don't get me wrong. And that does seem to happen all the time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What are we in? Game week 28, and we've had no penalties. I know that relies on players getting in the box. And that's been the argument that other people have made to me when I've been making this point recently about never getting any pens. I think it's 3 pens we've had since Ange came in the league. Yeah. So I understand under Frank, we basically went long ball every time. And in order to get penalties, you actually have to have control of the ball in the box, rather than just looking for a one-time header. But under Ange, we were consistently getting the top number of touches in the box, and I think it was Maddison was the most fouled player in the league, who also had the most touches for us. Mm-hmm. So the correlation, the math weren't mathing, as they say. You said about Ekatike's goal that was allowed against us. We also had another goal ruled out for the same incident against West Ham earlier on in the season, didn't we? Romero with someone with a push in the back, and they ruled it out. So I can understand why. In the moment, I was like, okay, well, he's pushed him in the back. It's a foul. But honestly, watching it back again, the slow motion makes it seem like nothing. To me, Kolo's just putting his hands out. He doesn't push. He just puts his hands out to hold Gabriel off.
Yeah, it's not like
Gabriel is under the ball. He's already misread the final.
You look at all these other goals that we're referring to that have been given this season, and there's a full push. Ekatike's one, there's a push. Van der Ven's one, there's a push. Gabriel's one last season in the derby, or the season before, there's a push. But when it's I'm holding space to get space, I thought it was a contact sport. It's a contact sport until it comes to Spurs. Like, I'm sorry, like I made this. I'm in a group with one Spurs fan and an Arsenal fan, and I put in basically the narrative, the the typical small club narrative of like, oh, the big six cartel get every decision. And, you know, we've always kind of played under the rules that like we don't really get those big six decisions. I feel like that's kind of always been a thing for us. But now that we're not in the statistical like top six or even top half of the table, and maybe I said in the group, maybe it's because I'm feeling like everything's against us. But since we've gotten even worse, I am noticing we just get no decision. And maybe that's because in other games gone by, we don't get a penalty, but we're already winning that game. Mm-hmm. And this season, obviously, and for a few seasons, we've just been conceding goals. So,
if anyone wants to be extra angry rather than move on from this, and they've just released the ref cam of this, and it's absolutely horrendous, in my opinion. It makes it 100 times more infuriating.
I might need to stay off Twitter then tonight, because I know it was amazing when we did our Twitter Reacts, Billy, and instead of having a bunch of your tweets like we usually did, it was just every single tweet on my timeline had to do with that Gabriel decision. It was just, even though I think played awfully, it was almost like that decision was so bad. I'm
sure the ref cam is about to reignite the argument as well. It's horrendous close. It's really, really bad.
I wonder, can you hear Gabriel screaming in it? Oh, I wonder, did that have a part to him blowing the whistle?
The audio, please.
The ref says it was a clear foul, end of, literally says that. So
that's ridiculous.
Even a recent example, though, I agree with Sam that we probably this season don't even probably have that many touches in the box. But I can even recall just from a recent game, that time where Lisandro Martinez just threw Solanke to the floor, and there wasn't even any look whatsoever by the referee or by VAR. That's just a recent one. I bet there have been plenty of others that we could think of that. How's that not even looked at as a penalty?
You look at the penalty that they gave Newcastle for the foul on, was it Voltamata or Dan Burn? You look at the Everton and Man United game last night, and they're wrestling going on and from corner kicks and all. Like, it's clear that we are on the wrong end of decisions. Like, that Moani goal should have been given. Gabriel was caught underneath the ball. That's why he went down. As soon as he felt hands on the back there, that's why he went down as theatrical as he did, probably with a little scream as well on the way down, the little pussy hole. But at the end of the day, I suppose you can't really go mad at him. It's smart play in his regard. He realized he got caught under the ball, and he sort of, went and looked for it at the end of the day. But, it's just shocking that it was given. The referee has no understanding of that whatsoever. Like, the fact that, and VAR should be able to pull that up. They look at fucking everything else long enough. They should be able to pull up and go, oh, he's caught under the ball there. He's gone looking for this. But there's just no smarts about them whatsoever in terms of any of these decisions.
And I blame Arsenal completely for this, because it's something that they've created. Is this new thing now where players are essentially wrestling before the ball is kicked at a corner, and they can't do anything about it because the ball's not in play. So they can't give a foul, they can't do anything. And like, it's just turned into such a rubbish event. Like, I noticed it last night, Everton Man United. Every single corner was some massive melee, and this is what Arteta essentially started at Arsenal, and it's completely ruining the game from a spectator's point of view. It's just so boring.
Honestly, inside the box,
the amount of whistles that go before corners now is just so boring, and they can't do anything about it anyway because the ball's not in play.
The thing is, Dave, as well, like you're saying about the refs, we just every game we just watch the ref hide behind VAR and VAR hide behind the rules. It happens every game. The only reason they don't get involved in that goal being ruled out is one, because the referees made the call. Yeah. But two, because it's not a quote unquote clear and obvious error from the ref. It's a subjective call. So you can't really. I think you can go in and look at that and say that's the clearest dive you've ever seen in your life. Only just ahead of Trossard's dive later on in the game. But they don't do that. And then they go, well, you get on Ref Watch with Dermot Gallagher, and he goes, well, the rules do say this. So unfortunately, the Spurs have got nothing to complain about. And you're just like, I want to smack you in your bald little head, mate.
Yeah.
I think what King Hoddle says there in the chat is really important. And I think this is going to be something which gets worse as the season goes on, is that I can guarantee you right now, it's tinfoil hat theory, whatever you want to say, but every club in the Premier League wants Tottenham to go down. It's just
Yep.
like every single club would like that. It's the same as the Leicester title season, right? We were getting all things going against us because everyone wanted Leicester to win the league, and I can guarantee you, subconsciously, referees and players will all want Tottenham to go down, and this is going to be only going to get worse before it gets better. So I think King Hodler's right. These people are now predisposed to go against Tottenham just because the whole country would love to see Tottenham go down.
Speaking of diving, remember that Newcastle game not too long ago where Spurs got 2 yellow cards for diving, and yet, like Billy said, you watch any other game, you'll see plenty of players do the exact same thing, and yet no card seems to come out. I do feel like this season's special because there's just a million examples that can pop to your head this season, whereas previous seasons, you would think of like 3 or 4 really bad ones that might have gone against you. But then you also would have to admit there probably were some decisions that went for you. I can't really recall a game where many decisions actually went our way.
I was just going to ask the question, what ones have gone for us?
Exactly. And then there's so many bad ones against us at the same time.
And we are literally backed up by the stats as well. I know every fan base feels this way, don't they? But we're backed up by the stats that we have more yellow cards for per foul than any other team in the country. So
yeah, that's how more ridiculous it is that we actually can point to stats instead of tinfoil hat conspiracies. Just wanted to quickly touch on this one, Dave. Igor Tudor was seen fuming on the touchline, telling Mickey Van de Ven to push up that defensive line. And Van de Ven seemingly was ignoring him, at least from what we could tell by the camera, on his tactical instructions. Is it possible that the players simply don't trust maybe Tudor's supposedly more aggressive, high-pressing system? Because I'll be honest, that setup, the way we played, it felt very similar to a Thomas Frank team.
Yeah, look, it seems like that to me, Jack. When you see Tudor screaming at him, Mickey Van de Ven's only about 10, 15 yards away from him. We can clearly see him and clearly hear him, and he's clearly just giving him the arms to sort of push up. And the importance behind it is if the forward line goes, the midfield line goes, the back line have to push up to a certain height as well, so that there's not these massive gaps for Arsenal to be able to play out into and pass around and break the press, which is what they ended up doing a lot of the times. And that's the importance behind it. It just goes to show that there's too much player power at Tottenham Hotspur right now. They all have massive inflated egos after the Europa League win. That's the level they believe they're at. And they believe they know best, and I think partly it might come down to them having a conversation with Ange Postecoglou before the Europa League final to sort of try and implement and play a certain way. And now they believe they sort of hold all the power. But when you also go and look at Mickey Van de Ven's post-match press conference where he speaks about, the importance of the press, going after it, getting it right and stuff like that, well, then push up the back line. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, so it just speaks to me of player power. Like, a lot of people have problems with Christian Romero for what he does on the football pitch and some of the statements. Mickey Van de Ven tends to get a free pass. He's ignoring the manager's instructions during the game yesterday. He also walked off ignoring Thomas Frank, after a Chelsea game and stuff like that. This is a guy that needs to start being looked at, and a microscope needs to start being put on him. Now, I have no doubt he's pissed off with Tottenham Hotspur. He probably wants out. You see rumours of Real Madrid sort of being linked to him today and stuff like that. So I've no doubt, he's probably going to make it himself be as difficult as possible to work with so that he can sort of get out of this football club. But it's not good enough for Mickey Van de Ven. It's nowhere near good enough. He gets too much of a free pass, and people need to start calling him out on this stuff. It's not good enough.
He does, Dave. He definitely is the golden boy. Because personally, I thought he was pretty bad yesterday. I didn't think he did anything particularly well. And I've seen people saying that he was one of our best players. I was really confused. I thought maybe I had to reassess my whole footballing philosophy because I couldn't really remember one decent thing that he did. Admittedly, not many other players I could think that, but people saying that he was one of the best players, I was like, what?
Surely it was Colomwani that was our best player. He's the one.
I also thought that Jed had a pretty decent game when he was defending one-on-one. When it was more of like there was other stuff to it. The whole defense, I think, was generally fairly poor for most of the game. But Jed's one-on-one, I thought he marshaled Saka pretty well. But with the Igor Tudor thing, Dave, I've watched that video a lot of times, and I think that someone put it in the comments. I don't think he was talking to Mickey. I think he's talking to Radu, because when you when he then says Mickey, I think Mickey then turns to look at him and acknowledges whether he takes it on board. I don't know. That's a different question. But what I've seen people saying is he doesn't even give him the decency to look at him while he's talking to him. And it's like I just don't think that, because when the camera moves, you can see Radu is moving somewhere in the back line, and then that's obviously not helped by that supposed ITK coming out today and jumping on the bandwagon to say that like bad things are happening behind the scenes of Mickey van der Ven and blah blah blah. It like, I'm not saying that we're being manipulated, but we're in a position where it's so easy to manipulate emotions right now because everyone is at critical. There's not much more that a lot of people can take, and it'll be interesting to see what will happen if things continue to get worse. Not like, God forbid we get relegated, but be interesting to see the kind of response from the fans, in terms of actual genuine support, whether they still go to games or not, or if they just think, you know what, and then if they don't, we go even further down. Sorry to get so... I don't think we're going to get relegated, but,
Well, we'll get into that.
Didn't Astro Gold also allude to in his latest video that he was screaming at Jed Spence a few times to sort of stay concentrated, getting closer to Saka, stay switched on and stuff? Like, these are basic things that the manager shouldn't have to be in control of every single individual movement of them players on the football pitch. Like, at some point, they have to realize what their jobs is, stay tuned in and sort of, be switched on in the game. The fact that the manager is spending so much time shouting, especially across the back line, especially in that North London derby, it's shocking. Who's calling the line? The manager shouldn't need to be screaming on the pitch, telling Radu Dragston or Mickey van der Ven to push up. That should be called by Mickey van der Ven, who is the captain. He should be screaming across the line. He should be looking across the line. Like, this is something that defenders could do back in the day. Why can't they do it now? Why can't they take on that extra responsibility? Staying switched on, realizing you're up against one of Arsenal's most important player, the guy that has currently between the two teams now of what we've got left, has the most goals on the pitch in terms of North London derby goals, and he's having to scream at him to get tighter to him and to stay switched on and stuff like that. I mean, these are just basics that these players should be doing on the football pitch themselves if they have any sort of pride or fucking character about them, or any desire or hunger to be better than what they are. These are things that they should be doing. You shouldn't need Tudor on the pitch screaming for them to do the basics. Like, being in the line across the back line is fucking basic.
The only slight excuse I would give to the players, and I don't want to give them an excuse because this is another North London derby where we've not seen a performance. From minute one, I think it was reflected in Arsenal's dominance, it looked like the players had pretty much no idea where they were supposed to be standing, where they were supposed to be pressing. I just felt like we just kind of looked like a mass of players on the pitch that were kind of half doing what they thought they should be doing. And not to say that, as you say, defenders should know the basics of defending. As you say, the guy has somehow, having done basically nothing for 2 games, has got 5 goals. Honestly, the guy must be the luckiest footballer in the world. I still would have loved to have him, but now I hate him more than I hate Saka.
Is there a player power issue, Billy, in the club?
I think so. I think it's been evident. Thomas Frank could not get a hold of it at all. I think that that's one of the main reasons why he lost his job. He could not handle it. And sadly, the reality is we've pretty much seen it under most managers. Certainly at the end of their tenure anyway, you always get these stupid articles that say the Tottenham players were fed up with training, or the Tottenham players were eventually bored of the training methods and all this kind of stuff. And sadly, it's just a reality of being a Big Six club, I think. It's just, unfortunately, the way that the modern game is going. You see it at Man United, you see it at Chelsea at the end of a manager. Unless you're someone like Arteta or Klopp or someone like Guardiola or someone like that, then it seems to happen everywhere. You have to be such an insanely strong manager to deal with it that it just sort of permeates every level of the game at the moment. It's just unfortunate that these players need something more than just being able to be paid a massive amount of money to go and play for a club like Tottenham, and they still need more to be able to go and do that, do the bare minimum. They still need a manager to tell them what to do, or they need, it's unbelievable the amount of power these guys get. But the reality is the way that since, the wage boom of like the last 10, 15, 20 years or whatever it is, since the TV money came in, because they're on such ridiculously high money, clubs are left with no choice, because you've either got You know, you can't get rid of 11 players on 200 grand a week, or you get rid of a manager on the same amount of money. It's just the cost of it is just ridiculous. So it's just the way the modern game is, unfortunately. But it shouldn't have to be that way. And I think, you know, we can blame Frank, and you know we've done that all season. We can blame Tudor, we can blame Langer, we can blame all these people. But at some point, these players have got to get some responsibility. Have got to take some responsibility for themselves. And at the end of the day, it's only the players now which are going to be able to keep us in the Premier League. Like no one else. There's only some. Tudor is not really going to be able to have much of a coaching job in 9-10 games, whatever it is. It's down to the players now, and for me, that is worrying because I'm not particularly convinced on this set of players. I'm not convinced that if it gets down to a bare fight between us and West Ham, say we go into 18th position in a few weeks' time or something like that. I don't think they've got the fight to be able to get out of that, and it's worrying that we these guys have not got the attitude that, you know, they should be, you know, dying for this football club, and that's not something we've seen for a long time now.
Two things in what you said there, Billy, though. I do think the club allows the players to have the power, though, because they accept mediocrity. They accept the shit that's on the football pitch. You never, ever really do enough in the transfer windows to go, okay, no problem, out you go, you come in, or really bring in a certain level of quality players consistently to really put people's positions on blast and stuff like that. So you allow them to start yielding and wielding the power. You allow them to start dictating, you know, training.
Standards at the club are so low.
Exactly. So you're allowing these players to sort of develop that power by a lot of mismanagement further up the pyramid and stuff like that. But also in terms of what you're saying about trusting these players to get out of a relegation battle, like I said earlier on the stream, I think Romero's statement is a clear reflection of how other people would feel in that dressing room about not the board not bringing in enough to help them and stuff like that. You know, so they're certainly, there's no incentive there for them to fight for the ownership. That's a big problem. But also, a lot of them already hate the fans. We know this. How many times have they popped at us over the recent years? So there's no incentive for them to really fight for us either. And to be honest with you, if you're a Romero, if you're a Van de Ven, I don't want to say this, but it's for them individually. It's better we get relegated because there's no way the club can keep them. They'll have to move them on. If we stay up, the club are under no obligation to let Romero or Van de Ven go because they're tied down to big contracts. So it actually suits some of them players for us to get relegated, for them to be able to get out of this football club.
Scary and dark thought there. Faz Radfire saying fans need to stay behind the team until the season's end. I think we have no choice than to just try to get behind them as much as we can, Faz. But of course, you know, we do need to analyze the performances and analyze the body language and just the way that these guys have been conducting themselves. And I agree with
200. There's the 200,000 people at the parade not sure that the fans were behind this team. You know what I mean? It's been lost because of a lot of their actions on the football pitch. A lot of them, you know, a lot of times I feel like we run less than the opposition. We're not as committed in terms of challenges, misplaced passes everywhere and stuff.
Yeah.
The reason why the fans have turned on them this season is because their own actions on the football pitch. I don't want to hear them scream and cry about, we need the fans between now and the end of the season. We know this, but there's 200,000 people at Europa League parade, even though we finished 17th in the league. They had the fans on their side. So I don't want to hear it from their point of view.
And also I think as well, like these fans have probably tried their very best to go into this season with the expectations that, again, we wouldn't be in this sort of situation again of, you know, having to go through a 17th place season with the season feeling like it's already over within a few months. I just don't think any fan had that sort of realization or expectation going into it. And so now we're just realizing that this is just a terrible place to be in. Once again, we thought that we did everything in our power to try to avoid that by bringing in what was supposed to be kind of a steady man like Thomas Frank. You know, with the investment that was done over the summer, I think everybody's just in shell shock at this point with where we are, Faz. But yeah, everybody just has to try their very best, of course, to try to see out the rest of this season and try to hopefully, like Billy was saying, apparently, you know, during the North London Derby, the fans were very much behind the players, even when they were 3-1 down. The players just have to start doing their part. But do appreciate you, Faz, and also anybody else that is in here. Do smash the like button for us. Get into the comments, please. And if you want to do what Faz has done or what others have done, feel free to support the channel by becoming a member or throwing a super chat. Good to see Steve is in the house as well. Big up to you, PH family. Sam, I'll go to you on this one since you brought it up a little bit earlier. Following that 4-1 loss, are you concerned that despite replacing Frank with Igor Tudor, that this squad maybe lack the intent, the grit, let's say the fight required to, you know, survive a relegation scrap?
Like, when you look at the facts and figures in front of you, and you use your eyes, there's nothing that should suggest that we will be the team that stays up. The only positive for us somehow, and this is a good little comeback for anyone who's got West Ham friends or people like that. Every weekend I come in, I don't know. Dean said he was going to watch it, so I'll shout him out if he's watching it. Dean says every week I come in, oh, bloody hell, mate, another loss. I'm like, well, we haven't won a game since the start of the year, but somehow we're still above you. And it is somehow we're still above them. And there's a reason we're still above them. That's the only hope that I'm hanging on to. Obviously, other than the fact that I just can't even really fathom. I can think about going down, but I can't even really fathom the fallout of going down. I can't even comprehend it. And I think that what we do have in our favor is, as the weeks start to come back, these teams are in these positions for the most part because their players aren't good enough to follow the instructions of the manager, or they're not good enough for the league. Admittedly, you can say the same thing about us, but the positive is that, and look, they might not come back in and be amazing straight off the bat, but as the weeks come on, as we get towards the end of the season, we're going to be getting more and more players back. And those players, like Solanke under Ange, will feel like new signings. Mm-hmm. Yes, the game on Sunday, I think one of the main reasons that we failed to compete in that was the unfortunate reality that Solanke didn't start. That's not to say that he would have started over more. I would have started him over Moani or whatever. I just would have started them together. And we haven't actually said in that game, I feel like we went as long as we've ever gone in any game I've ever watched under Spurs. I've never seen us go long that many times to little effect. But Solanke would have made at least a 50% difference, 30% difference. It would have done something so that every once in a while you can create something. Hopefully he's back in for the next game. That'll be a big boost for us. I'm seeing stuff that Porro's going to be back for the Fulham game, potentially Danso as well. Whether or not I believe that, I don't know. I haven't actually seen the full quotes, so I don't know if he actually said he'll be back in for Fulham, or if he said he'll probably be back in for Fulham. There's a big difference. Yeah. But as it comes on, hopefully Kudus will come back, and Kulusevski and Maddison, if they've still got legs and arms and whatever, as the weeks go on, these players will come back in, and I just think that from that moment on, there'll be confidence coming back into the players, maybe not from a performance-based thing, but knowing that these big players are coming back in and we're going to have cover, and you're not going to have to play 90 minutes on Sunday, 90 minutes on Wednesday, as it gets thicker and thicker in the season with the Champions League. Obviously, these players that are coming back in can't play in the Champions League as well, so they'll be fresh for these Premier League games, hopefully. So I just think that is the main reason, other than the hopium, not even copium, the hopium, that we will stay in the league because we're too big to fail.
Yeah. I mean, Billy, do you believe that there is any grit, any sort of determination in these players to stay up, or kind of in Dave's boat, which he mentioned earlier, that maybe some of these guys want to get relegated that are in the squad?
No, I don't believe there is. We definitely haven't seen any. I think, sometimes pointing at maybe Romero, who saved us for a few games during the season. He's obviously had as many games that he saved us that he's, let us down as well, though. So, no, I don't believe there is any grit at the moment. It's up to the players now to prove it wrong in the next 10 games. We haven't seen much evidence. We definitely haven't seen any evidence of it lately. We haven't won a Premier League game since 2025. So, no is the answer to that question. And I think it's a massive, massive concern. I think, and this is, I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, and this is where I'm really concerned at the moment, is that at the moment, everything at the club should be gearing towards Tottenham staying up and Tottenham staying up only. And that should be, the culture that's coming down is that this is how monumentally important it is that we stay up. And until that is secure, then I don't really care about anything else. And it's really interesting to see today that obviously there's been a PR piece from someone at the club saying what will happen if we stay up. I don't care about that right now. I just care about staying up. And I feel like the players and everyone at the club has the same attitude. They're pretending, and there's not a possibility that we can go down when there is a very, very real possibility that we might go down. It's the same with like season ticket prices being frozen. Great, that's the minimum they need. What if we go down there? They can't freeze season ticket prices there. It's almost like the club are pretending that there's no kind, and that's fine in terms of we're too big to go down. We're going to act like that, but it's not good enough anymore because now the possibility is very, very real. We have not won a Premier League game in 2026. We are bottom of the form table in the last 12 games in the Premier League. We are 20th. Wolves are above us in the form league. It's a very, very real possibility, and we're acting like it isn't.
No, I'm kind of with you where I actually don't watch those videos where, they're financial ones or whatever they might be about if Spurs get relegated. It's kind of like, I'd kind of rather just watch those videos if it actually does happen instead of, living in this sort of hypothetical situation that we do go down. I think I'd rather just talk about, will we go down instead of if we end up going down. Those videos do end up scaring me and I don't want to click into them. Dave, if the new manager bounce hasn't triggered any sort of change in mentality, do you believe that maybe the issue has more lied with the players' character or maybe just a lack of quality in the current squad? Are we reading too much into things? Given it's only been one game under Igor Tudor, do you think he can perhaps change that mentality in the players?
I would hope so, Jack. But looking at it yesterday, the North London derby, I was expecting there to be a bit more energy, a bit more sort of pep in her step, a bit more commitment than what I saw yesterday, and that really sort of worried me and concerned me. In that regard, you look at Michael Carrick at Man United, instantly the players just look different. It looked like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. You didn't see that with our players. It looked like they're still carrying the same burden. A lot of them look like they're playing individually on the pitch. No one's really fighting for each other, running for each other, supporting each other. Then you look at the problems we've had where we've sold our best players over the last couple of years and brought in sort of teenagers and stuff like that to replace them largely over the last couple of years. I warned it when we were selling Harry Kane. I said, we sell Harry Kane, we keep making wrong decisions. We're not going to replace him. Same with Son. And we are going to head towards relegation quicker than many people expect. I warned it when we had the three managers in a season, Conte, Mason and Stellini. I said, this is what relegation clubs do. We're hurtling down there with all these wrong decisions. I've been warning about it for years, and we're in this situation now. And when you look at it, I think West Ham, they've got some difficult fixtures like we do, but they've also got some winnable fixtures in there like we do. Honestly, I think the next two games will tell me everything. Tudor coming in from North London derby, there's always going to be a difficult task with the mentality that, that our team are in. Maybe they're not up to the desired fitness levels that he needs for them to be able to play this aggressive sort of football that he's looking for and stuff like that. And you look at Arsenal, they've had a couple of draws and that, but the reality is they're top of the league, so Fulham and Crystal Palace, these next two games will tell me everything I need to know where we're going. If we turn up in them two games and put in solid performances, I'll go, we have enough about us to avoid relegation. If we turn up the same we've turned up for the last 17, 18 games where we've only won 2 in the Premier League, we're going down. And I stand by my statement. If you're Christian Romero, if you're Mickey van de Ven, players like that, even Xavi Simons to a certain degree, players that have come in on big money that Spurs aren't going to let go on the cheap, for your own cause to get out of this football club, it is easier to get out if this club gets relegated rather than if we beat it. And at some point, I think some of them players might make their decisions if they haven't already.
Do you worry, Billy, that, even with a change in manager, that the squad mentality won't change? Maybe are we reading too much into this game with Arsenal? Do you think there will be a change in the attitude and the mentality of these players with him coming in, or do you fear that they are the problem?
I think Fulham is a big test. If we come out with Fulham and we get smashed, then I think we're in possibly irreversible damage trouble. Arsenal, as much as it's a derby for us, and you would have expected to have seen more, and it was disappointing that we didn't. The golfing class is obviously there, quality-wise. It's gigantic. Bigger than it's ever been, for ages. Unfortunately, when it wasn't that long ago, 8 years ago, that we were better than them. But if we have the same kind of appearance against Fulham and Crystal Palace, if we don't win one of those two games, then I think we're in massive, massive trouble. So I will start to judge by Fulham and Crystal Palace in particular, because then after that, if we're still seeing no signs of improvement, then I don't know where we go. I don't know what happens then. But Fulham is a huge test because, again, it's another week where we've had 7 days in between, which we haven't had a lot this season. There's a week in between Fulham and Arsenal, a whole week of training. We are going to get some, Igor Tudor said there's going to be 2 players back, which apparently, as Sam said earlier, is Danso and Porro, which would make a big difference. If after all that, after being essentially dragged 4 points away from relegation now, if they can't do anything against Fulham, then I would have a major, major red flag, I think.
Sam, do you think Igor Tudor can fix this player's kind of losing mentality at the minute? It just seems like there's no change in the 5 days that he's been here. It looked kind of just the exact same as Thomas Frank. Do you think he can fix it by the time we play Fulham?
No.
Well.
Okay. So I'm not going to go out and fully criticize him because Arsenal was the free hit, right? But I didn't see anything in that game to give me any confidence so far. Not to say that he won't, and not to say that I won't gain any confidence, but from that game, going in from the only sort of experience of his managerial style that I've got, I was underwhelmed. I don't think he made great decisions with his subs. Obviously, unfortunately, he was hamstrung with this not being able to start Solanke, if that's the what he was told by the medical staff. But I just feel like there was a lot of things that he could have potentially done to try and wrestle Arsenal's foothold on the game. But unfortunately, I just felt like we just sat back and took it, no pause. And I think, to be more positive, I think that he can hold it together. I think he'll be able to hold them together, whether or not it's him or the players just deciding, okay, for fuck's sake, what are we doing here? We're not actually going to get relegated from the Premier League. Come on, let's step it up. So I don't know if it will be him or it will be that, but I think that something will happen. Maybe it's a union of the two where they come together and they do what they've got to do. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be long. Realistically, as that suggests.
Who's the figure, though, Sam, on that? Who's the figure that you think will pull them all together? Because usually, when you see other clubs in trouble, there's maybe a player or two in the dressing room you can look at that, go, do you know what? They'll pull this lot together for the greater good of the club. You think we have that in the squad at the minute?
It would be James Maddison if he was there.
Yeah, as what I was going to say, Billy. I think the only player who's capable of doing it is James Maddison.
He got relegated at Leicester, didn't he?
He did, but he's now 29 or whatever. He's won a European trophy. He already thought of himself as a European elite. I'm not saying that winning the Europa League makes you an elite player, but it only helps the narrative in his mind. Yeah. I've won a European trophy. I am the guy of Tottenham right now. There's no Kane. There's no Son. Romero is not here at the moment, and he's not the best of orators, as we know. He leads by example. Whether or not you think his example is the best to follow is up for debate. But I think it's I've seen Maddison in a few photos recently in training, and I just hope that he takes it upon himself as the vice captain.
Oh, maybe let him come back if there is a chance.
I do wonder.
Yeah, I was going to say, Dave, I understand where he's coming from about Maddison, and that maybe in the last season or two, he really has made himself, the face of Tottenham. He seems to really enjoy this club. It seems like he is a guy that, even though I agree with you, he did get relegated at Leicester, maybe there is some maturity there in that he has really embraced the club in the last season or two. So he would probably be one of those guys you can look towards that would try to put the team on back.
Kulusevski, and they're both injured.
One of them, please. Just one.
I get what you're saying when it comes to James Maddison. This is also the same guy that had Brennan Johnson under his wing. You didn't see any improvement out of Brennan Johnson or Maddison getting in his ear in any of the videos saying, look, instead of jumping up and down behind the window like you're in fifth grade, pulling faces and stuff like that, should you not be out on a training pitch with about 10 footballs learning to cross a ball and stuff like that? This is the same guy that had this guy under his wing. You didn't see any improvements, didn't really see any tutelage or stuff like that. Some of the younger players look up to Maddison because he's probably the biggest star we have in our team right now. But that doesn't mean he's a good leader or he's going to be the guy that's going to pull everybody together. I like look, James Maddison and what he does in terms of like helping that young lad that's sick at the minute and everything else. Like, kudos, fair play and stuff. But it doesn't mean he's going to be a guy in the dressing room that's going to pull everybody together and stuff like that. That takes a special type of leader to do that. And I don't see that with James Maddison. He's already got relegated at Leicester. I get he's older, and I get Sam's point that maybe with age comes a little bit of wisdom and stuff like that. But it's a bad sign when you're relying on a player that's out injured.
I think
on the football pitch to try and pull it together.
I think, Dave, the reason, at least for me, maybe Billy's got a different reason. I think the reason I feel Maddison will be the player is because when he did that interview and he spoke about he always felt at some point in his career he was going to be a Spurs player. He just felt like it fit. I feel like he is at the moment, even though he's been here for the shortest amount of time of a typical Spurs like legend leader kind of player. He does seem to get it, and maybe it's growing up in England his whole life and experiencing like the legacy of Tottenham, but I don't know, something about
if he's
him,
not on the pitch. I get what you're saying, but if he's not on the pitch, there's only so much change he can.
Yeah,
really
of course.
You need that guy on.
If he can instill the right kind of mentality going into games, helping give the team talks, and just like you said, taking Brennan under his wing. To be honest, I feel like Brennan and Maddison were just like two buddies up for mischief. I feel like they took Archie Gray under their wing, but I don't feel like Maddison was looking at Johnson as like, you're my young G, I'm gonna take you on the straight and narrow. I think they were just they were going out and having fun together, and I'm hoping that
should be having fun when you're 17th in the Premier League.
Yeah, no, of course. I'm not disputing that. I'm hoping that Maddison, having sat on the bench all season, and someone put in the group, I didn't see the name, someone put in the chat that this will be the second relegation he's involved in. I mean, he's played 0 minutes so far, so pretty harsh, but I take your point. Hopefully, having sat on the bench and having to watch all of this shit, he actually has the perspective of being in the crowd as well, to actually see the hurt that is going on in the Spurs fan base. Because let's be honest, like, we're hurting. It is real, Football is an extended family member. Yeah. I spend more time watching football than I do talking to anyone, So I spend more time thinking about football than anything. So, I'm obviously gonna be hurt by this stuff. So I don't know. It is just hope. I hope there's one player in the squad. I can't see it being Van der Ven or Maddison. Maybe it could be Vicario. He's that kind of player that whether they'd listen to him or not is a different story. But I feel like he's the kind of player that would be saying the right things. I think Porro as well has that kind of mentality. Other than that, I just think everyone else is kind of too nice, Not that that's the criticism, but I don't think that they would want to stand up in front of the group and be like, guys, you've all been shit. I think it would be like they wouldn't deliver it with the right like venom to actually strike something inside the players. And I'm just hoping that there is someone, even if it is Igor Tudor, I'm hoping there's someone in the squad, around the squad, that can actually give them the kick up the backside they need to just focus and play fucking simple football and not pass the ball away ridiculously and not going long every 5 seconds when it's not working, showing for the ball from defense if we're going to try and play out the back. Just play the simple football and we'll stay in the league. I believe it.
What I will say as well, just towards the end part there, Sam, Igor Tudor can't do this on his own. He needs a couple of players in that dressing room that are going to fight for him and pull the squad together. And I think everyone has to understand this. Igor Tudor can walk in with it, whatever he wants to do, but he needs a couple of players in that dressing room to pull the lot of them together and fight for him. If not, we are absolutely fucked.
He's very unlucky that Bentancur's not in as well.
Yeah, or Kulu, but I just
Kulusevski
don't.
as well,
I
yeah,
just
it's
don't
just
feel
mad.
like we've. Yeah, I just don't feel like we've got that player within the squad,
No.
especially with what we've got currently fit. I just don't think we've got that player, and I don't want to hear anyone mention Ben Davies either. I mean, the guy shouldn't be here. You know,
It has to
he'll
be
still
Romero, isn't it?
be ground
Romero's going to have to do it.
Yeah, it's got to be Romero.
It's
Yeah.
got to be. He has to do this. If he is a captain of relegating Tottenham, his career should be done at the top level. It's unforgivable. You can't survive that kind of. He should be thinking right now. If I'm captain of a relegated Tottenham, I'm done at the top level of football. Like that's what these players need to be thinking. If they're the people that send Tottenham down, they're never going to recover from that. They shouldn't do anyway.
No, it should be a massive stain on their careers and honestly their
But it
reputation.
won't. Look at Madison. Look at Madison. He got jumped back to the Premier League at Tottenham Hotspur. This is the way modern day football is.
Yeah. Drop kicker teacher from earlier saying the Liverpool game is coming at a bad time for us after these 3 games. For us may not even be a 6-pointer anymore. I mean, I think we just got to focus on Fulham and Crystal Palace before we even get to that.
Game by
Liverpool
game now, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I
Till the end
don't
of the
know if we
season.
can look that far ahead. It's impressive that you even are artisty. I think we're all really worried about how this Fulham game will go because they're a good team at the minute, but they're also still like a lot of teams in the Premier League. You would think that they are beatable. They should be an easier team to come up against than the likes of an Arsenal, but I don't know. I think it's up to us.
It's going to be a battle.
Yeah.
Do we have
But
that in us?
they're a good test, I think, right? Because they are actually an okay side for the time being, but they are at the same time, you would think, beatable. And at least I know the game isn't played on paper, but you know, what Marco Silva is getting out of that team compared to what we've been getting out of our side, I don't think many people would still take that many Fulham players into the Spurs team at the minute. So we should be able to get something from it if we stand any chance of surviving this season. Then we'll worry about the Liverpool game and whatnot after that. Drop kick your teacher. Then we also had this from Chris saying, in all seriousness, if we lose to both Fulham and Palace, can you see Tudor going?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Yeah, it'll be like Stellini again, won't it? It'll be desperate times, I think. It'll be like they'll try anything because then if you lose those two, you have to assume that we lose to Liverpool as well, and then it's desperate times. They'll probably get Mason or something like that. It will be absolutely desperate times then. But yeah, I definitely can see that happen.
Get Arian, get him in.
Yeah.
We're probably then going to try our best to replicate what Forest are doing and sacking as many managers as they can.
If we do that, we'll be no better than Marinakis, Jack. I was just about to say, in that regard. But look,
then it'll be April with no Premier League wins. Like you can't.
I mean, if Marinakis were our owner, he would have fired Thomas Frank 4 months ago. At least there's that. We probably wouldn't even be in this situation if that were the case. Because damn, was it obvious to everybody, including this fan base, that Frank needed to go. But you know, they, for whatever reason, decide to not embrace the Marinakis system of just whenever any signs of trouble come about, just cut them out. But,
probably would have kidnapped a few and held them at gunpoint like he did to Morgan Gibbs as well at Forest, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they need. A bit of life threat on the line.
We are approaching the hour mark, and Billy, I know you need to go, so I'm going to plug, of course, Change for Tottenham, and then, of course, anything else that you wanted to either plug or anything that you maybe want to say before we let you go here.
No, I just look forward to next Tuesday, and I'm going to Fulham as well, so I'll be able to have a little live match report, and hopefully we'll be safe by then, and we'll have 3 points on our name. Let's hope.
Yeah, I mean, can't remember the last time we spoke about a win with you.
2025 would be the answer. Yeah.
Jesus. Well, Billy, thank you so much, man. Good to have you.
Thank you, Billy.
You guys.
Have a good rest of your evening.
Have a good evening.
Everybody do, of course, follow over Change for Tottenham. I'm putting the link in there, of course, if you want to see any protests or any sort of bits and pieces about the pressure that we should be putting on this board, as well as the ownership. And, of course, you know, the guys are in charge, like Vinna and Johan Lange. Billy's doing a great job plugging them and also taking part in it. And also, if you do run into him at the ground, very, very nice guy. And hopefully you get to spend some time with him. We're going to move on to maybe one of the last questions of the evening here, which just had to do with the fact that apparently Spurs are planning to rip up the wage structure, Sam, and invest in the squad if we do, in fact, avoid relegation. But surely the time to rip up that wage structure was years ago, right? Under Jose, Conte, Pochettino, of course. Should Spurs even be ripping up the wage structure if we're becoming more and more of an unattractive club anyways to high-profile players like Semenyo and guys that have rejected us recently?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's coming out today that Gallagher is supposedly our highest paid player on 200k, and there's probably a decent, I'd say probably even 50% of the chat probably don't even rate Gallagher as a player. So you do run the risk of potentially ending up like Arsenal of 10 years ago, or let's say 7 years ago, where they have, the remnants of Wenger's team and Emery's team all on high wages, 300 kind of K zones. And if we, our recruitment's been so bad over, pretty much my whole life. I don't see, if they start to pay big wages for these players, like I don't see us being able to potentially move on all these duds. And when we got Vinay in, I thought and we've got Charrington as well, who's supposed to be some big shot. Is it not business 101 to not tell all of your competitors and people that you're trying to buy from that you're going to be spending more money?
Just like we announced we had 150 million.
That's a good point. Yeah, it seems eerily similar to that, where it just doesn't make any sense why you would even let this come out through some journalist or something like that. You wish they were speculating that's the case, but the fact that they're coming out with it as like official inside source news, you're like, geez, why are we doing this again?
It just makes no sense. Like you're putting yourself on the back foot, and also it's kind of like, oh, if we get relegated, then we were going to put money in, but now we kind of just got to make do with what we've got. But as you say, the time to put money in at the absolute latest was in the summer. You already knew you were guaranteed 50 million from the Champions League. You could have put pretty much all of that on wages, as well as the supposed 150 million that we never saw anyway. There was money. There's been money. So if they're not going to do it then, I can't really imagine them doing it now. I said this at the beginning of the season, that January was going to be the most important window for us because it was going to be difficult, and they failed. We said we'd try and give them a few windows, but they failed so badly. How can you give them more windows? It's genuine negligence of the highest order. This is supposed to be the pinnacle club, in terms of Daniel Levy's created this, perfect sustainable model. And to his credit, up until last season, he had kept us in that position, but they've come in supposedly to be our saviors who've been here the whole time. And they were talking about spending 70+ million on a winger after losing Brennan Johnson, obviously selling Brennan Johnson. I'm not complaining about selling Brennan Johnson because I think he should have gone. But selling Brennan Johnson on the 1st of January and losing Kudus on the 2nd of January, and then losing out on Semenyo the next week and not signing another player. You lose Bentancur, you bring in a player that doesn't have the same skill set in Gallagher. Whether or not I like Gallagher or not, it doesn't really matter. I like his energy. There's just so many points where they could have turned it around and they didn't. And to then come out at the end of the season in that, puff piece that Johan Lang did, basically saying, I think, we're in a good position and, we think we're better off trying to sign these players in the summer. It's like, well, you've just watched player after player after player go down. Through January, we lost like 6 players. So how could they look at that, especially after news was coming out like every other week, such and such players out till May, such and such players out till end of March? It's like, these are months away. Even if you just brought in someone on loan, bring in some loans, because we needed reinforcements and they've let us get to this position. And as much as the footballing stuff is on the players, as we've said on previous streams, everything goes back to the owners and it's unacceptable.
Yeah, Dave, I just think it's insane that we're now hearing this when the opportunity should have been there to rip up the wage structure, spend big on high profile players, when Spurs were actually an attractive club, when we had managers like Antonio Conte, when we still had Harry Kane and Sonny leading the front line, when Spurs were consistently challenging for Champions League and European spots. That's when you rip up the wage structure. That's when you really push the boat. It almost feels too little too late at this stage. Like, what's the point of ripping up the wage structure when, I would be honest, like Spurs had no chance or really look like anything of an attractive club right now? It's almost like we kind of should probably just be a bit more savvy at this point with the money that we want to spend to try to somehow push ourselves back up to those European places and then look to push the boat out then. It feels too little too late for me.
Far too late. Should have pushed out the boat when they had a manager that had proven he had success everywhere he's been, i.e. Jose Conte. Should have pushed out the boat for Pochettino after the Champions League final when he needed a rebuild. And most importantly, they should have pushed out the boat when they had Kane and Son, players capable of going and winning you big games. That's when they should have pushed out the boat and went for success. They didn't, which shows they have no ambition. Also, if you're one of these current crop of players and you've got a contract renewal coming up, you're going straight to the club and you're asking for a piece of that pie, because a lot of them have purposely been kept on low wages. But I also think there's probably a feeling within the club, Semenyo turned us down because we didn't offer him the wages because it wasn't within our wage structure and stuff. No, a lot of these players are going to other clubs because they have more ambition than you. They can give them, not only can they pay them handsomely, they can go, do you want to win silverware alongside of that? Come here. And that's where Big Tottenham's biggest problem is. We can't offer that. But the reality is, you got to question, why has this come out now after a window's closed? What's due up now that we're coming towards the end of the season? Season ticket renewals for next season. That's why this is being put out there, to get people into a false sense of a false hope again. Next season is going to be different, so there's a big clamor for people to take on their tickets, because you can already see this year a lot of fans being pissed off, not turning up. A lot of fans, sort of putting their tickets up for sale online, not wanting to go and stuff, which they obviously look at the stadium and the attendances this year, haven't been able to sell out a Champions League home game at all this season. They can see fans are starting to get pissed off, and fans are literally not putting the money into the club that they once were. So that's why that statement has come out, because they want people to renew the tickets under a false promise. But you can guarantee when the window comes back around again, we'll be waiting. We'll piss around for a month trying to change manager and stuff like that, which takes a month off them spending, like we done last year, and then we'll use all these other excuses and then be scrambling around again come next summer, on deadline day, looking for a few players that haven't got moves elsewhere that we can bring in here. The timing of it is because the season tickets, I think they're due in March, some stage, middle of March. That's why this piece has come out.
Yeah. Just by the way, everybody, as we're wrapping up the show here, smash the like button, please. I'm not even sure if we're at 100 likes, but there's been well over 200 people in the house. I think at one point we even eclipsed 250. And then if you were watching us on Twitter while you were on with Billy and watching the stream that's over there, feel free to follow us over to YouTube, because I think we've had close to 1,300 people total watching us on both platforms. So we would appreciate it if you followed us over here. And then also if you're in the stream right now on YouTube, do smash the like button and feel free to do what Jerome has done and what some of these others have done in supporting the channel. And thanks to anybody that has been participating in the chat. Jerome saying, even if we would avoid relegation, we are in deep, deep trouble. We could potentially finish 17th again with no Europe this time. Who would even want to join us? That's the thing, right, Jerome, is that you finish in 17th basically 2 times in a row now. You're just becoming less and less of an attractive club for the top players that we know that we've been needing for a while now. I think this whole idea of Spurs wanting to now spend big and bring in players on a high wage, I think it's too little too late. I don't even know if you can do that anymore. I think we might actually have to operate more like a Brentford or a Brighton and be a bit more savvy now with the money and bringing in players that maybe no one's really aware of, or maybe guys that aren't necessarily fully established yet, but could maybe drive us up the Premier League table. I think it's too late at this point. I don't think we could even attract any sort of top level player at this time, especially if we don't have Champions League, if we don't even have Europe, and then we're a team that's been flirting with relegation for a few seasons now. It's just far too late for me, Jerome. I completely agree with you.
We're going to have to do what United done this summer. Pick up the best of the rest from teams lower down in the Premier League. Yeah. That's what we have to do. We have to pay the money and we have to pay the wages to lower them here.
Yeah. We'll gamble on foreign players.
Yeah. But who's to know whether we could even get the Mbeumo?
You won't get any big names in the door. I doubt it.
Well, I think Manchester United were able to get an Mbeumo and Acuna and Šeško because they're still Manchester United at the end of the day. Whereas
they're also not big signings. United have always picked up them players off teams in and around the Premier League below them.
Yeah, it's just I'm not sure if Spurs have that sort of draw anymore. Yeah. Also again, like what I said, we don't have the Kanes or the Sons anymore in the team that are just these high-profile star players that teams would even want to play with. Especially with Romero or Van de Ven being rumored to leave or wanting to leave. just doesn't, like, there's nothing about Spurs right now that in any way seems attractive, apart from the fact that we have such a nice stadium, and I guess we have 20 cryo chambers that the players can use, after the game, and nice pools and hot tubs. There's really nothing that would want a player to come here or attract a player to come here.
And some
Big
of your
up,
better
Tom.
players will want out the door as well, which makes it even sort of, it's not like you're going to be building around your best players, because a lot of them will be pushing for moves this summer out of here. So, it makes it even harder. And if we get relegated, we're in a right mess to run, let alone, like, financially, all the loan repayments we still have to make. You lose sponsorship deals, you lose your best players. We're going to be in one big financial mess if we do get relegated. This club can't afford it.
Thank you, Shemtan, by the way, for sending in this question. And thanks to all the members that sent in questions for the end of the show. We do appreciate it. And if you are a member, it is something that you can take advantage of. Shemtan saying, how did we end up after this winter transfer window with one less winger than we actually started with? And we still get that idiot Langa come out and say we couldn't find anyone / didn't want short-term signings. I think Sam more or less mentioned that just a few minutes ago, but I think what's so damning about it all was that Johan Lange was like, oh, we don't want someone for the here and now. We don't want someone that's short term, when we're literally in a relegation battle. It's like, that's exactly what you need. You're probably going to have to just bite the bullet and bring in someone that, you might have to get rid of like a season later, just so that you can guarantee that you are going to survive. We haven't brought in anyone that you would say guarantees us some sort of survival or gives us that hope. Like what we were talking about earlier, guys that you can point to that are leaders, guys who have been in this position before that have found their way out of it. It's amazing that Spurs did literally nothing in the January window. They didn't even sack the manager in the January window. They decided to keep him the whole month when that was a good time to do it as well. They literally just sat and did nothing that whole window, essentially.
We laughed, Jack, on February 2nd. We laughed that we thought we'd be sitting here like on the show after deadline day discussing a player that had been, or player/players that have been brought in that weren't really good enough to play for Spurs. Instead, we were laughing, saying we wish we were talking about players that weren't good enough to play for Spurs, rather than sitting there empty-handed thinking, what the fuck are we going to do now?
Yeah, I remember that was a good point, actually. That would have been more nice just to debate whether the guy was good enough with whatever person we signed. Instead, we're just complaining about the fact that we didn't bring in anyone at all. You're absolutely right. I remember that conversation. Sean Hurl saying, when do we fall into administration in the EFL, year 2, 3, or 4? I don't want to get into that stage yet, Sean. We just got to survive first, man. But Spurs are headed down a very bad path. Do really appreciate your support, though, by the way. Which season are we getting promoted? Dave, everyone's doom and gloom at this point. Everyone's starting to give up, it seems like. I guess we're going to really have to face these conversations if the Fulham and Crystal Palace games don't do well. Then I think we can really start to entertain this. But for now, I'm going to remain delusional. Dropkicker teacher saying, which players do you think actually care? Maybe just Joao and Xavi. We did talk about that. Dave, anybody that you can think of just to appease Artist T?
I didn't see one player on the pitch that cared yesterday.
Yeah, we seem to have that conversation. Kind of a grim one, but do you already have plans for the channel? If we go down, I think we're always going to be doing the channel. Dropkicker teacher, no matter what state we're in. What are your thoughts?
I was thinking, someone said earlier about, maybe I said it actually, I think, and I was looking at someone's comments about whether people would still follow Spurs if we went down. I actually kind of feel like, if I can find one positive from it, I was saying to you guys in the green room that over the last 6 or 7 years, my actual interest in football other than Spurs has gotten so low, because my point was, I don't really want to see other teams, especially my rivals, playing good football when we play shit football and lose every week. But going down to the Championship, I feel like, for me anyway, not that I want this by any means, but the only silver lining of it is that maybe it would reignite my passion for football, all around football, by seeing these other teams, these other passionate fans, who are
no VAR.
Exactly. And I wouldn't it just takes you out of the bubble of the Premier League and elite football to strip it back down to the pure game, So I was hoping that seeing all these other teams and seeing these stadiums. Maybe I'll start going on like away stadium, like away games.
Yeah.
You know, when are you going to end up in like Wickham or something? You know, I mean, that's to be fair, that's not even that far from here, but I don't know, somewhere else.
I did say this, and I know it's delusional, but I did say there is something, even though it's painful and like honestly probably taking years off my life, but even being in a relegation battle, there is something kind of thrilling about it. Like it is just surviving. It's like sort of just like taking every breath one time, one breath at a time.
Yeah, George right now finding the thrill in this. So I'm fucking hating
It
every
sucks.
week.
No, don't get me wrong, it sucks, but maybe there is some like that's what's nice about doing the channel, at least.
Yeah.
Artist Tea, is that you just get to vent and be able to not just be on your own really in the world of trying to understand Tottenham Hotspur. It's nice to have other people to chat about it with when you are in situations like this, just that you don't drive yourself crazy. What are your thoughts on the 3 in the back system? Because he's not going to change it. I don't really have any issue with 4 in the back, 5 in the back, Artist T. I think it's more just the manner in which we play. I'd like to see us play more aggressive. I'd like to see us not sit as deep as we have been in the last game and also in games under Thomas Frank, because I just don't think that's been working for us. We just don't seem like we're a team that's good enough to be able to just put every man behind the ball, really frustrate teams, nick a goal, and be able to hold on to that 1-goal lead. We've just shown this whole season that we're not capable of it. I'd like to see us maybe go back towards, of course, nothing as crazy as maybe what Ange was doing, but something similar in the fact that it would be nice to see us actually pressing teams with more organization, winning the ball high up the pitch, and creating chances more that way. Because at the minute, like, I don't even know if it is system related. I think it's more just the principles and the style of play that have been really hurting us. I'm going to go on to AK Shek's question there. Big up, lads. My question is, what percentage of blame do you give Romero for this relegation battle? Sam or Dave?
Yeah, I read the rest of the comment. I think it's all in one here.
Oh, sorry. I've read that this yellow accumulation will likely result in more suspensions if he gets another yellow after he returns, meaning he'll likely miss 7 or 8 matches this season due to unavailability. Also, reports of him leading the revolt against Frank. Sure, we can make excuses. He's our best player. Frank is shit. Vicario is god-awful. The board let him down, and the referees clearly target him with bias. But for me, as the captain, he has to do much, much better on and off the pitch, and I'm not giving him a pass. What percentage of blame would you give him?
Yeah, same. Well, what we've got, a squad of 25 players. I think you divide 100% by 25, and I'll give him his portion of the blame like I will everybody else. At the end of the day, I get what people are saying about the suspensions, but on the same breath, we moan about the referees being unfair to us. How many times has Romero been on the wrong end of decisions and stuff? That has helped to some of these accumulation of yellow cards and stuff. So, and then also, I'm not being funny, but the fact that him and Mickey van der Ven are like the club's top goal scorers, I mean, is a huge concern to me. So you'd argue the 2 centre backs, especially, even though we've got problems with them, are the ones that are probably pulling their weight the most in this team in that regard. So for me, I wouldn't attribute any more blame to him than I would to anybody else, to be honest with you. Like I get people get frustrated by the suspensions, but I think some of it comes down to Spurs being refereed different to other teams, to some of them yellow cards that have led to suspensions and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, he's contributed a lot more goals than half of the team has. So for me, I would just give him the same as I give everybody else. At the end of the day, he wasn't on the pitch Sunday. Rather, Dragusin was. Look at the mistakes he made. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. So everyone deserves their piece of the pie.
I mean, we do look better off with Romero than without Romero, but Romero has hurt us by not being available, of course. But I agree with that sentiment that there's been so many games that you could point to that he's actually, honestly, some of the points that we have right now that we desperately need are thanks to Romero saving us on plenty of occasions with a goal or whatever moment that he's had. But at the same time, he's absolutely hurt us for not being available for these games. Like, it's really going to come back and hurt us. Yeah.
And the thing is, he does look like a bozo right now. I understand the frustration. You can't come out and moan at the board for not helping in the transfer window with the lack of players available, then go off and get sent off the very next game. Yeah. I mean, it is absolutely stupid from Christian Romero. But again, do I think it was entirely a sending off? I don't think so either. I think, again, harsh.
Yeah. Sam, anything to add to the Romero before we wrap this up? Oh, I think you're on mute there.
Because my keyboard's so loud. I don't think that there's like a quantifiable percentage of blame for Romero overall. I think maybe the question was more tailored towards like this chunk where he has gotten multiple suspensions to this specific part of the season. He's contributed to it getting worse, which I think I can agree with.
Well, is that
Yeah,
not why
based
we
on
have
that
Radu?
alone.
Everyone thinks Radu is amazing. Is that not why we
Yeah,
have
but also
him?
I think everyone's being so harsh on Radu. Like, he's been terrible. Don't get me wrong. I thought he was pretty decent for the first half. He was defending probably better than any of our other players until he was on the ball. But I think everyone's forgetting the guy was out for like 11 months and he was thrown straight back in yet
What was the
again to
excuse for
another
them?
situation.
What was his
He's-
excuse for the 20 odd games underneath Ange?
But we're not
Postecoglou?
talking about that. I'm talking about
No, but you're
strictly
making an
now.
excuse based off this
No,
season.
I'm not. I'm talking
His
about
form,
strictly now.
he
I'm
was doing the exact same stuff
being
we're
explicit
now.
to say I'm talking explicitly about now.
Yeah, because it's cherry picking. What
No,
I'm saying
I'm not
to you is,
cherry
take in
picking.
the
I'm
full
trying to make a
context.
point.
It is cherry picking. Take into the full context Radu Dragusin. He played 20 odd games underneath Ange Postecoglou, and we were
Okay,
still
you can make
seeing
the
some
point,
of
but
the
I'm
same
not
shit
making
we're
this
seeing
point.
now. Because you're using the injury and the layoff as an excuse. He was doing it
Because-
before that.
But my point is, when he came into the squad originally, if you want to go back to that point, he was thrown in and he was the senior defender amongst a makeshift back four. So I think he was overhated for that, because every goal that went in, it was, oh, Dragison's out of position, when for many of the goals last season, it was other players that resulted in mistakes that led to goals. But this season, I think everyone's like, okay, he was shit last season, so we're giving him one chance to be good, and if he's not, then he's done. And this is where it comes back to, he's had 11 months out. He's had a serious knee injury. You can see how slow he is on the turn now, like even slower than he was before. It's going to take him time to get back in. He's probably not going to get that time to actually get back to a level that we would say is acceptable. But I just feel like the pile-on is so typical. Like every time, I'm not calling you out directly, but it's like I see it all over Twitter, all over the group chats. It's like every game, it's like, oh, Dragusin. Everyone is shit. I'm not saying, oh, leave Dragusin alone. He's good. He's shit. But everyone is shit. So I don't understand why the pile-on is like, oh, Radu does this, Radu does that. In the mistake that led to, the header that he did badly. So I think Sarr also put him under pressure there, but no one's mentioned anything about that. He's reacted.
You see many Premier League midfielders knock a ball like that back to the centre back.
No, I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just saying, like, my overall point is that Radu gets more criticism than anyone else. No, I've not seen anyone criticizing Sarr for a chest height pass, like as the last defender, but everyone will criticize his header, which was bad.
I think where the criticism heightens around Radu Dragusin.
He has been at fault for like 3 of the 5-6 goals that we've conceded recently, like deliberately the guy that you would point to. So I think that's why they're piling on him, is that at the end of the day, he has contributed to a lot of the
when
goals
you compare it to when Danzo steps in, you don't see these massive errors. And I think that's where people are questioning how good Radu Dragusin really. Because I think under Ange Postecoglou, a lot of people gave him the excuse of the highlight. We're going to see much better when we're not playing this highlight. He stepped in under Frank for the last couple of games. I think he was at fault for, don't get me wrong, Basuma should never lost the ball in midfield. But at the end of the day, your centre back is there to go out and engage the ball. He dropped off, allowed Sharky's goal against Man City. He also was caught out of position out on the left-hand side, ballooned the ball straight back into middle, and didn't get back in quick enough to cover the space that he'd already vacated. I think against Newcastle, there was a mistake there again in the North London Derby, the 20-odd games underneath Ange Postecoglou. I mean, as soon as I seen the guy get in trouble in possession against Karabag when he wasn't even under pressure at the time, they only pressed him because he had a long touch and ends up taking a red card. It shows that this guy is just not good enough. And that's where the frustration comes about. Like, I get we're having conversations around the likes of Christian Romero and stuff like that. But, I see a lot of people always going after Christian and stuff like that. But then when it comes to the likes of Radu, he's had a long injury layoff, this, that, and the other. And it's like, what are we doing here?
But I'm sorry, I can't accept that, Dave. Like, everyone, every day, in every group chat I'm in, all over Twitter, Radu is fucking shit. Every
Well, he is.
single post I see, come on. Like, people criticize Romero, but Radu gets as much criticism as any other player in the team. And just one comeback I'll say on some of the mistakes he's made. I do agree. But then again, he also was thrown in for some reason after this long layoff to left centre back. The guy's terrible on the ball, and you want him playing on his left foot. Like,
Yeah,
I think
that's
he was
smart.
thrown
Yeah,
under the bus.
agreed.
Like, that's all I'm saying is, I've maintained it since I've come on. We have a scapegoating culture. Everyone is terrible, and I just don't like it when one player is getting loads of abuse.
No,
I
get
do
what
think
you're
he
saying.
is shit though. Like, and
He is shit. He is shit.
I get what you're saying, but in order to improve, I get everybody's been poor enough this year, but some others have stood up more than others. And they're the players that you want to keep around and build on. And the players that haven't stood up and done anything or contributed at all, they need to go. I do get what you're saying, that every player deserves criticism. But by that mantra of going, everybody's shit, we're not going to clear out a squad of 25 in the summer. But what we do need to do is keep hold of the better players from this year and build around it. And Dragusin hasn't been that. The fact that Danzo has stepped in multiple times and we don't see the errors, even though he steps in after not playing for weeks on end and stuff like that, and he can do a job. That's where Radu Dragusin is getting pulled out left, right, and center, and rightly so. We can't sit here and accept it. At the end of the day, he is paid. And there's no excuse for it either, because his agent has spent how long begging, speaking in the media, saying this guy has to play. And anytime he does, we see that sort of shit. And I think the agent needs to realize maybe you need to speak to Radu and maybe get him to up his performances. That way, he would stay in the team. He's not in the team because he's not as good as what we have currently there at centre-back. And even Kevin Danzo has come in after him and displaced him because he's just more consistent, more reliable. And at the end of the day, I think the criticism of Radu Dragusin is absolutely fair. He keeps making bozo mistakes. Now, when it comes to, like, balls in behind and him slow getting onto it, fully understand that about being out for a long time, trying to find his legs and stuff like that again. But there's some stuff in games, out of position, shit in possession. For a guy that's 6'4" and looks like a Greek goddess, my God, he's not great in the air and stuff like that. And I just think rightly so he gets pulled out. And where I get worried is like, we constantly go after likes of Romero. People constantly going after, he's suspended. But how many goals has he scored this year to pull us out of the mire, to put points on the board? That doesn't get enough recognition and stuff like that. But at the same time, and it was the same with Brennan Johnson, people defending Brennan Johnson all the time. At Tottenham Hotspur, we have a severe problem where we prefer to protect the underdog and and go after our best players. It was the same when we had Harry Kane here. People always going after him. He's slowing down. He didn't score today. Well, he didn't score one out of the last 15 games, and you're going after him and stuff like that. We have a severe problem here. Even Ben Davies, people protect the weaker players because we are the underdog in terms of the big six, and everybody always wants us to lose. So we have an underdog mentality here at Tottenham Hotspur. And sometimes I see the fan base protecting the worst players of this fucking squad. And I'm sick of it. We are going nowhere by doing this.
I think the original point was from AK Shags just about how Romero has hurt us by not being available for like 9 games at this point, which is absolutely valid because we need Romero in the team in order to stay up, and he's not helping us by getting suspended or missing this many games. I would like to say, though, plenty of these suspensions have felt not justified in that he's made a clean challenge on a player. It's blown up as a yellow card. He's argued with a referee, not really being that aggressive either, gets a yellow card. So some of these yellow cards, I would say almost half of them, I would say are actually unjustified, really. So I do kind of feel for Romero in that regard. But of course, getting the red card against Man United, now being out for 4 games, after just calling out, the board for not being, supportive enough of the team is just bozo-esque.
At the same time,
he's hurting us by not being available. Missing 9 games is unacceptable.
Yeah, look, 100%. But at the same time, it's why it's why you bring in other centre backs other than your first 2, so that they can come in and step in and relieve a bit of pressure, whether we get an injury or suspension or stuff like that. If the players aren't coming in, going, doing the job, like Cadanzo does and stuff, that's where then people start putting it all on their best players, going, we need them that badly. We can't go 1 game without them. So what's the point of trying to build a squad of 25 people then? What are we paying all the other fucking 16 members of the squad to do then?
Yeah.
They have to be held accountable. You can't just, we've done the same with Kane. As soon as Kane was out, we're fucked. You can't keep adopting that here at Tottenham Hotspur. You have to put demands on these players stepping in.
Before we go, Sam, Dropkick teacher saying Sam and his left are useless defenders, and also Sebas Wolf saying he's just another Dyer, just with long hair. Who's better between Eric Dyer and Radu Dragic?
Well, I mean, just on pure what we've seen, Dyer surely is better.
I would agree. Actually, I think Dyer is actually better than Radu from what I've seen.
And I feel like there's no nuance. People can't understand nuance. Like, there's a difference between going out and saying like, "Oh, I think the over criticism of a player is harsh." That doesn't mean I'm the head of the president of their fan club. But for some reason,
Comes
people
across
always
like that.
seem to. But it's like, it's so aggressive from one side. Unless you're aggressive back, like, no one listens, because they just say, "Well, you just like this player." It's like, no, here's my reasoning, and if you want to take that or not, that's calm. If not, I've said my piece now. You know?
Yeah. I got it.
It's crazy to say that someone could be worse than Dyer. I agree, Sebas Wolf, but I think Radu Dragic actually does take the cake. I think we'll leave it there, though, everybody. Still plenty more Tottenham Hotspur to be discussed next week. Hopefully, we're chatting for once about a win, because, man, do we need one at this point. Really do appreciate all the support, though. Thanks to everybody that's supported the channel, donated to the channel, participated in the chat, and the people that did give us their questions at the end of the show when it came to the members' questions. But we'll see you next time, everybody. As always, come on, you Spurs. Hopefully, we have a win to be discussing next week with Sam. Alrighty. See you next time, everybody.
See you soon.